We are now recording. I'm with Yinlong, and she and I have been planning this for a long, long time. And this special interview, I always like to put things also chronologically. And chronologically is we had about 8 inches of snow today, and here we are. It's now evening, and I'm with Yinlong, and I want to acknowledge and praise Jeffrey Doerr from MassMutual, RU Financial, because I had interviewed Jeff, I don't know, 6 weeks ago. We met, uh, guess where? On LinkedIn. We met on LinkedIn, and he was so fascinating, and his one of his things is women in finance, and as he developed that, I'm getting, what words are you trying to tell me?
Are you recording?
Yeah, it's gone.
No, it's
See, this is down home. My wife has to come in and give me directions, important
okay.
directions.
It happens.
We're recording, and that's the nice thing about this. It's real. It's real. So anyway, through Jeffrey Doerr, he said, you really should meet Yinlong, who does such remarkable work in financial for MassMutual beyond. And that's all he had to say, because I have so much respect for Jeff. We become friends, and then we connected, and here we are. So I'm done with this introduction. So why don't you do Yin? Why don't you do a quick little bio, and you and I will jump into what I think is going to be such a. By the way, the other thing I wanted to say, and I said this to you before we went on air, that your life, it's like a movie. It's a Wonderful Life that comes out Christmas. You've had a wonderful life, and you're young. And there's my research. There's a MassMutual perspective thing, and the headlines I'm looking at it now says Yinlong had only one dream as a child, to come to America. So a lot of this is going to be your journey here. So anyway, do a quick little bio, and then we'll jump in. Take it away.
Thank you, Calvin. It's in today's age, I think it's so important that to when I agreed to do this, what's on my mind was out there, whoever is watching, I hope that they get a glimpse into what financial advisors world is. And I hope the only reason that I am who I am and I am at where I am at today is because all the help that I received along the way. So I wanted to share my views. So whoever out there watching, maybe they are contemplating whether to come into this business or not. I sure hope this offers some information for them. So I grew up in China. My hometown is called Spring City in the southern tip of China. Growing up with two elder siblings, my older sister and my older brother, is fun and full of privileges, I would say. Life was very simple, not much of any material things to talk about, but full of stories, legends, that friendship, most of all, friendship. So early on, I was making friends with my sister's age, who is 11 years older than me, and my brother's age, my brother, the wise guy. He is the type that was sit in the corner and just watching you go bananas. And at the end of the day, he would tell you as is. So I had great friendship with not only kids at my age, but kids at my sister and my brother's age, which really, later on, I realized how lucky I was. But at the time, I was just having fun.
Right.
So a simple and fun childhood.
Okay.
I'm one of those kids you probably say competitive. Having two older siblings, I never wanted to do less than what they have accomplished, and they are quite accomplishers in their lives. So I would say that.
Your parents were both educators, so that helped your formative years?
Absolutely. Before we started, Calvin, you said, I was commenting that both of us are, on timers. For you, it's a change of
Yes.
habits, but for
Oh, yeah.
me, it's actually a habit from early on. My mother was a teacher all her life, middle school teacher, and I learned from my mother early on, I was never late. Always punctual. So I was heavily influenced by, by my parents. My father worked at a university. He actually joined the university as in the first or second year of that university, and worked all his career
Wow.
and retired from the university.
Wow.
So
Wow.
um, that
So
was.
you went to university, undergrad in China.
Mm.
So what was I know nothing. I don't know enough, not nothing, but I don't know enough. But what was college life like, undergrad in China?
Yes. So um, I went to one of the top 10 universities in China. Um, and that all by itself is another long story that we need to do another session on, how
Okay.
I ended up being in that university. So in China, you need to take so-called college entrance exams, which is composed of, I think, 3 days exams on different subjects. And before that, you need to fill in the application. What are your top 1, 2, 3 universities and specific departments you want to get into? I did mention I was competitive.
Yes, you did.
So out of all the choices, right, I had one university and one department on my application. And even my teacher was saying, you got to have, plan B. But I was competitive and I was a confident little girl. So I said, no, that was the only thing. And of course, as life has it, right, I was 6 points short of reaching the score for that university, for that department. So I ended with this wonderful university, and that was another story. So I went to Xi'an, which is in the center of China,
Hmm.
the most historical ancient city, I would say.
No. No.
Um, Lucky me. But at the time, I did not realize that. I remember to get to this university from my hometown, I took a 24-hour train ride to Chengdu and then changed to another train ride, 18 hours, another 18
No.
hours, I got to Xi'an. And I remember the first day, as the train pulling into the train station, I just burst out crying because I came from the spring city, everywhere was green. And I came to this city, everywhere is yellow, muddy, yellowish. And I burst out crying and I said, this city is so not beautiful. I can't imagine I would spend 4 years.
Wow.
Little did I.
What did you study, What did you
I
study there?
yes, and once again, I majored in computer science.
Okay.
And that's that competitive nature because science, particularly computer science, was considered as the camp for smart kids, and I had to get in. So I majored in computer science. As it turns out that I wasn't interested in computer science. So a couple of years ago, one of my best friends from college, and when we met, and she told me her memory of me in college was I read all the books in English and I read all the books on philosophy, which is very true. I
Oh,
spent very little time on computer science, even though um, that competitive edge of me wanted to make sure that I graduate the best I could, which I did. But I spent most of my time doing sideline business,
okay.
anything but computer science.
Okay. Hey, so talk about your graduation from college in China and what happened in June of 1989.
Well, in the beginning of 1989, there was a lot of movements, demonstrations in China.
Was this
Um,
Tiananmen?
that happened in June,
Okay.
but at the
Okay.
beginning, I only had one focus at the time, just one focus. I needed to finish my exam on for GRE exam. I needed to finish my exam for TOEFL, which is for all the foreigners to come to United States. You need to
Hmm.
pass that test. I needed to finish my graduation thesis. So with all three major tasks in the short 6 months time span, I wasn't paying any attention to what's happening outside my library and outside my dorm. Um,
Wow.
and every morning I got up, I just went to the library. The gentleman, the doorkeeper, opened the door. Many days it was just two of us, and I had to finish everything. And that was my goal. Uh, when I was 5 or 6 year old, I read a picture book my sister gave me. It was on Madame Curie. And until this day, I remember one picture that was Madame Curie burning the clothes of her late husband, um, after he passed away. That she was burning his clothes, and I never forget that picture. Um,
Wow.
and of course, the story talk about her journey to come to the United States. So when I was 5 or 6 year old, I just knew I was coming to United States. I did not know how, I did not know when, but as I was growing older, especially when I was in college, I always knew, and I was preparing for that day, which nothing was going to deter me from that goal.
What an
So,
interesting, I mean, to really go introspective and why America, because this is what you always wanted to do. So this is a good point. And I've read and we've talked about this, and I know, and our audience should know, and this is the stuff that, like I said, they make movies about. Talk about your journey, the attempts, the rejections, and how many of the train rides you took to get a visa to come to America, and your resolve that I am going to immigrate to America. So talk about that whole journey. It's such an interesting aspect.
so after um, after I graduated, I applied to several universities in the United States, and I was accepted by Rutgers and a couple of other colleges. But I decided to come to Rutgers and major in human resources. At the time, Rutgers Human Resources was rated, if not number one, definitely top 3 in the country. So and human resources was something, it was a brand new concept. We never had that subject in China, and I was looking forward to. But to come to the United States, you have to get a visa. You have to get a student visa. And at the time, there were 3 general consulate offices in China. One is in Chengdu, one is in Beijing, one is in Guangzhou. And because of where my hometown is, I needed to go to Chengdu to apply for my visa. And Chengdu, it was a 24 hours train ride from my hometown. So
Wow.
I went to Chengdu, and 2 of my friends' families adopted me. They took me in as their own. I am in debt to their kindness forever. And it was only supposed to be a 1-week deal. I was supposed to go into the consulate office and hand it in my application, get my visa, head home, and prepare my trip to the United States. But of course, as life goes, it's never goes according to your plan. So I went in the first time, and the counsel talked to me for about half an hour. And then at the end of the talk, he said, he did this, put his palm towards me, and he said, "Not today."
Wow.
And
Wow.
little me, always eternally optimistic person. And I said, "Well, not today. That's fine. I come back." So I went back a week later because that was the rule, that you cannot go back right away. You have to wait for 1 week. So I went back a week later. After half an hour, it was the same hand gesture. So I said, "Okay, well, that's okay. Maybe today was raining. Who knows? I come back." So I went back 4 times, which means I stayed with my very dear friend for 1 month already by then. I got another no. I went back, and I moved to another very dear friend of mine's house. Because of some circumstances, they took me in. I shared the bedroom with his sister, and I never forget. I'm forever
Wow.
in debt. So I went back again and again and again and again.
Wow.
So it was my 8th time. So which means I was in Chengdu for 9 weeks already by then.
Wow.
My 8th attempt, I went in, and before he could put his hand up, I put my hand up to him. I said, "No, today you are not going to tell me no. I am telling you no, because I'm not even going to accept a visa from you, even if you're going to give me one. But I tell you this, when I land in New York, I'm going to send you a postcard to let you know." So I walked out the consulate office, and I took another train ride, 20 plus hours. I went from Chengdu to Beijing. That's supposedly it's the general consulate office with the highest authority, and I figured, well, if anyone is going to, override the decision, it's got to be in Beijing. So I took the train ride. My very dear college friend who came to the train station to pick me up, and she had 2 bicycles at the train station. And we rode bicycles to her parents' apartment. They took me in as their own.
Wow.
You never stop hearing me saying that. And it was only supposed to be 1 week, and this time it was 1 week. So I went to the office. I believe that day I got there around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and waited in line. And there were hundreds of people out there and waited in line. By the time I got to the first, they called checkpoint, there was a Chinese staff who would check all your documents. So when I got to that point, I remember that gentleman, he looked at my passport, and then he looked at me, and then he looked at the passport again. And then he asked me, "You have 8 rejections. Why are you here?" and I said, "Well, that's funny, because if I got 1 yes, I wouldn't be here."
Smart.
And 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 he said, "Well, at least you should have a clean passport, you know, to come here." And I said, "Well, that's a good point, but I already waited for 5 hours out there, and it's in the cold, and I am so cold now. I need to go in. Just let me try." And he was so kind. He let me go in.
Wow.
I went in, and I met this very nice young lady, and she looked at all my documents, and she looked at me. She said, "Well, sorry, I'm not able to override the decision." So I look at her. I'm like, "Well, you are Beijing. What do you mean? If anyone can override, that's you." And then she said, "By the way, your I-20 is expired." I-20 is the application, as you know, that sending to the foreign students, that we can use it to apply for visa. So in all this midst, I spend months and months in Chengdu, and everything going on. I didn't even know my I-20 expired.
Wow.
So I look at her. I said, "Well, no problem. I will go get a valid one. Then I will come back." So I took a train ride of 3 days from Beijing back to my hometown.
Wow.
And I got a new passport, and I got a valid I-20, and I took 3 days of train ride and went back to Beijing.
Wow.
And after hours and hours waiting in line, I went in. But this time I did not get to that young lady. I got a gentleman, and I handed in all my documents. He looked at it, and he put a stamp, a rejection stamp, and shuffled all my documents outside the window and just shut the window down. Now, I want to go on record. It was very rude, and he did not even give me a chance to ask a question. So basically shut down the window, and that means you have to leave because you're taking up the next person's time. So I looked over to the next window. That's that young lady who was sitting there. And I said to her, I remember her first name, Nancy. And I said, "Nancy, you told me I needed a new I-20. I got it." And she looked at me, and she just shook her head. And basically that shaking her head just shook away days and weeks of travel and hardship and everything. So I took my documents, and I walked out of the consulate office with my head held up high. I'm not gonna give up. Just because you don't even give me a chance to ask questions doesn't mean that I am going to give up. I have the third choice, which is in Guangzhou. So I went home. After preparation, I went to Guangzhou, and this time my mother went with me. My eternal lucky star.
Support.
And so I went to Guangzhou, and I remember that morning that my mom went with me and she was waiting by the gate. I went in, I had a suitcase carrying all my communications, whatnot. You need it, I had it there. So I went in and just after 2 questions, I was told I was given the visa.
Wow.
And I can tell you I was lost. So at that moment, after months and months and months of trying, on my 11th try,
Wow.
I was given my visa and I was lost. I walked out and I saw my mother at the gate. Just my mind was blank. And my mother did not even ask me a word. We got in the taxi and my mom held my hand and she said, "Don't worry. I heard they were opening the 4th American General Consulate office in Dongbei." And I just lost it at that moment. It's that kind of unconditional support
Yeah.
that give me strength
Yep.
to keep going.
Just an amazing journey. The you know, support of your mother, your friends, and your persistence. And so, moving along, you're now at Rutgers University in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, because we have a big Rutgers audience?
Yes.
Can you talk about your experience at Rutgers and how it molded and helped you grow as a person?
So when Rutgers was the gate. Rutgers was the gate for this brand new world for me. It opened the doors to all the possibilities. And I majored in human resources. It was in Livingston campus. I was one of the very few full-time students. Most of the students were part-timers and they were employees somewhere else. So I was so lucky to get in this program because it provided me academic knowledge and the real world experience at the same time. I cannot say enough about what an advantage that was. So as a matter of fact, that my first intern, my only internship job was provided by my classmate, Barbara Fraser Taylor. After the first semester, she was sitting next to me a couple of times, and after the first semester, one day, it was winter. Yeah, it was summer. It was a summer vacation, and one day that she called me out of blue, and she said, "Yin, would you like to come, for an internship interview at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center?" And I was like, "What? How lucky can you get, right?" So I took the train ride, another train ride. I'm very lucky with train rides.
Yes, you are.
So I took the train to New York and I had an interview with three people on the Friday. So at the end of the interview, and I remember the manager, Laura Palladino, she said to me, "So Yin, when can you start?" And I said to her, I said, "How about tomorrow?" And she said, "Well, we usually don't work on Saturdays." So that's how I started at Sloan Kettering I just think that being able to have that internship and at the same time attending Rutgers and learning all the knowledge that I needed to really support my work, I cannot say enough. It's,
Okay.
you know, I am so blessed and so lucky to have that kind of friendship. And I also want to mention one incident, and that really cement me in very early stage about extending kindness to strangers. I think that's the highest virtue for human beings. So when I was working at Sloan Kettering, one of my very dear friend from college in China, he was accepted with a full scholarship at Temple University.
Okay.
And with full scholarship. And after he went through all the trials and tributes and to get his visa, he was told his scholarship was canceled by Temple University. So he called me and asked me to help. And of course, you know me, the little Girl Scouts, and I got to do something, right? So I wrote a letter to the computer science department at Temple University to explain how hard it was to get a visa and how excellent my friend is. And of course, I don't have to explain how great he is academically. They know that's how they offered a scholarship to begin with. I also shared this story with Barbara, and Barbara said to me, well, Yin, Mr. Bill Cosby was received his honorary degree from Temple University. And every day on my way from the subway walking to Sloan Kettering office, I pass by his house in New York. So Barbara said, Yin, why don't you write a letter to him? And of course, I did. I wrote a long letter to Mr. Bill Cosby, whom, of course, I only watched the Cosby Show. And I handed it to his housekeeper one morning, not expecting anything. And I got a letter from Temple University and asked me to just inform me that they are reevaluating the situation and asked me to call back. And I did. And that day I called from Sloan Kettering office and I had my supervisor, Irvin Graham, who also knew the situation, knew the story, who was cheering for me. So I called back and the dean answered the call because I think we said to call at 4 p.m. And the dean answered the call. The first thing he said was, how dare you use your personal connections?
Wow.
And I look at Irvin, I'm like, personal connections to what? I didn't know anyone. And then he said, tell your friend Bing that his scholarship was reinstated.
What a great story.
And give your thanks to Mr. Bill Cosby.
What a
So
great.
I wanted to say, people have opinions about public figures such as Mr. Bill Cosby. And I have to say, what he did for a young man 20 plus years ago, he paved the path to success for him. So thank you.
That's a great story. So moving along, you've had a remarkably successful career as a financial advisor. It began 27 years ago. How did it begin?
So when I graduated, I was still working at Song Kettering, but I knew that I was not a 9 to 5 person. I worked on employee benefits. I worked on evaluations. I looked at the criteria that we use to evaluate someone's work. I wanted to be judged by who I am, nothing else. So I wanted to look for a career where I can connect with people. I have a passion to work with people. I don't know how much I can help them. Actually, looking back, more like they are helping me. But little did I know. So I wanted to look for a career to connect with people. So when I graduated from Rutgers, I answered a newspaper ad, which was
Jeffrey,
placed by Jeffrey Durr.
Durr.
So I went to an interview for 2 hours. Jeff and another young man, Mr. Mike Vesuvio. I met these two young men, so ambitious and full of energy. And I wanted to be part of that team. I wanted to be part of that winning spirit,
Yeah.
you know.
So that was MassMutual. That was MassMutual.
That was not MassMutual. That was actually that was Equitable.
Oh, okay. Okay.
At the time. So so that's how I started.
That's how you started. And I think as we kind of run out of time, what's really important is how you began. There's two things I wanted to, how you began the perseverance. I mean, you began a career with the Yellow Pages. And that is so hard because there's no money coming in, and you're out there with Yellow Pages looking up people who you could relate to. It's remarkable, and I think we have to get this out. And so you picked up the Yellow Pages and you looked up people with Chinese names for the bonding. And what I mean, just an amazing success story that you are. And before we went on air, we talked about, and this is a message to get out, how critically important it is for people to financially plan, which means go back to when you're a millennial and begin thinking about that. Yes. I mean, your comments on that. I mean, it's so important because one day you wake up, like I did. I woke up one morning, I looked in the mirror and I said, my God, I'm 70 years old. You know, and thank goodness I had enough, not enough, but enough guidance. So how important it is for people to really begin the pursuit of financial advice.
Well, I think, you know, when I first started, just like you said, I started with calling Chinese last names in the Yellow Pages. And so, you know, I go on records for those of you who were offended, who were annoyed by late afternoon calls from that little Chinese girl. I apologize. Those are my enthusiastic endeavors to connect with people. So that's how that I started working with people, just like you said. I can relate with, and I can help them to understand better about, you know, financial products to begin with. But I think that, you know, to have the right financial plans as early as possible is so critical because, you know, John Lennon said, life passes us by while we're busy planning. And that is so true.
Yeah.
We look back, 10 years go by, 20 years go by so fast.
I'm
but
right
that
there.
little bit of planning especially strategic planning, and not only just a plan, the actual execution of the plan is so vital, which again is explain my philosophy that, I don't just do financial planning and charge a fee and be happy with. My philosophy is planning is vitally important. Execution is actually going to get you to where your dream leads you. So I want to share a story that early in my career, when I first started, I had a referral from a good friend of mine. And I went to visit this young couple, and they had a 6-month-old baby. And the gentleman just graduated from Rutgers, actually, with a PhD. And I remember his comments when I finished my presentation, and he said, "Yin, I just got my PhD. Look at me. I'm on top of the world, and nothing is going to happen to my family. I am the provider of my family." And you know what, Calvin? The sad reality was I bought into his story. I bought what he told me. And I walked out of that house, leaving my beautifully binded plan on his desk. And I walked out. And a couple of weeks later, that this same friend who referred me called me and saying, "Yin, could you come with me?" And I went with her. We went to a funeral.
Oh.
And the minute I saw the young woman with the 6-month-old baby in her arm,
wow, that's
I
life.
I said to myself, this is the first and the last funeral that I am ever going to go without a death benefit check for the family.
Wow.
So just because that we did a fantastic plan is not good enough.
You've got to execute.
You have to execute.
You have to execute. And it's interesting because as I've learned in my experiences with social media, I was just talking about this today. I get thousands and thousands and thousands of people who see my posts. 87,000 people in 7 weeks see my posts, but getting them to execute, to engage, another story, a tough story. So to kind of wrap this up, I have one really interesting question, and this puts it so much into perspective about you. So most of financial advisors focus on insurance planning or investment planning. It's very rare that people in your position excel in both, insurance and investment. I did read that last year at MassMutual, where they have 9,000 very strong and capable financial advisors like yourself. There were eight advisors, 5 and 3, 8 advisors who achieved the highest honor in both insurance and investment. And you, Yin-Long, were one of them. So why is it important for you to strive for both? And this will kind of wrap our little time together.
Thank you. I think that's a very important aspect of what I do, is to provide options, provide the right options to people. I feel very strong. For instance, if Calvin, if you were given the car choice of Tesla only, you will always ended up buying a Tesla. But if you were given the car choices of Tesla, Toyota, Nissan, Mercedes, then you would think twice. What's best for you? What's more suitable? So I think that insurance and investment goes hand in hand. Because if I just have an insurance, one day that I may run out of it. If I just have investment, I may not even get to my goal before something happened to me. I really need to put two things together. And once again, what key is do the planning, look at your options. You may just choose to execute one or two or three, really doesn't matter. But keep in mind, Rome is not built by one day. You just start pacing yourself, start moving, executing on your own pace. And one day when you turn around, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, like I was. I mean, I didn't know you then, but I'm testament now at this point in my life, where I don't have to worry a lot. It's kind of nice. So, and I just have to reiterate, I mean, you're one of 8 out of 9,000. So people who are watching this, reach out, because you're quite amazing. Your whole journey has been quite amazing. But one last Calvin question to ask you, which is completely off topic. I always like to ask this to kind of finish up an interview. And here's the scenario: living or dead, excluding family or friends. Name one person you'd like to spend a day with. Living or dead, no family, friends, just somebody you'd like to spend a day with.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Marcel Proust.
Wow. That's the first time I heard that. That's so interesting. Well, it's right. You studied philosophy. So yeah, going way back. That's so interesting. What a great answer. And what a great interview and great insights into you in your journey. I always, I'll say this on air, to be continued, because this channel is always open for content for you to come back and explore and share, because your knowledge, your journey, and there's so much more to delve into. But we've made a really nice beginning. I can't thank you enough, Yin, for your time, for your graciousness, for your knowledge, and for your perseverance. You truly are an inspiration, and I thank you.
Well, Calvin, I think I'm the one that in debt to your kindness and your efforts to put this platform on. I think you are enabling people to connect on such a level. It's
I'm trying,
I can't say enough of that.
and I'm loving every second of it. And I get a chance to meet.
I can tell.
I get a chance to meet people like you, like Jeffrey, and a slew of other amazing, wonderful, accomplished people. And it's a great joy for me in my senior years to be able to do this, to have the faculties to do this, which is important. So again, I only wish you good things. Happy New Year, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
See, I
Yes.
know about that stuff. So Happy New Year, and to be continued. Thank you, Yin.
Absolutely. Thank you, Calvin.
Okay, bye-bye.